This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
People only live happily ever after in fairy tales. In my case, it seems it was a crime to have ever met Buck Barrow. I was brought up by a kind, loving, law-abiding father without the aid of a mother. But when I met Buck, it was a case of true love from the first. I knew I loved him more than I had ever loved anyone before, more than I could ever love anyone else for the rest of my life. And he loved me the same, if it is possible for a man to love as a woman does. I don't think I am the only woman who loved a man so much. But because I loved Marvin Buck Barrow, married him, was loyal and true to him, and to my marriage vows to the bitter end, I am now serving a 10-year sentence in prison. I am not guilty of the crime charged to me, but I am guilty of loving my husband so much I couldn't bear to have him leave me, not knowing what hour of the day or night I may receive word of him being riddled by bullets fired from some officer's machine gun. I am asking all who may read this story, was that a crime? Even though I knew my life was in danger, I went with him wherever he went. Rather than live without him, I chose to face death with him. I got a divorce from my first husband on June 5th, 1931. On July 3rd, 1931, I married Marvin Ivan Buck Barrow at America, Oklahoma. We bought our marriage license at Audible, Oklahoma, near where my father lived. Dad liked Buck, as did most everyone else who met him. Buck had many friends. Dad thought I would be happy. And I was. But it didn't last. I was too happy for it to last. I did not know Buck was in trouble when I met him, but if I had known, it wouldn't have kept me from loving him. So I married him and went with him to Jacksonville, Florida for our honeymoon. Then I learned he was an escaped convict from the Texas State Penitentiary at Huntsville, Texas. Of course, this cut me deeply and left me broken-hearted. It was more than I could understand. The man I loved so dearly was an escaped convict. But I loved this man who was hunted by officers of the law. I vowed he would never get in trouble again if I could help it. I begged him to reform. He said he loved me, as I did him. He said he wasn't a criminal at heart. He told me he was tired of that kind of life, and since he had met and married me, he wished he were free from the sentence hanging over him. I told him that before we could become happy, he must go back to prison and finish his sentence, which was 4 years for burglary. We couldn't run from place to place hiding from the law. So I begged him to give himself up and go back to prison. I was sure he wouldn't have to stay long. On December 27th, 1931, after spending Christmas in Dallas, Texas with Buck's mother, we drove to Huntsville, Texas, where the main prison is located. We drove up to the front of the building and sent for Warden W. Wade to come to the car. He did. Buck told him why he had come back, to give himself up and serve his time. Warden Wade was very kind to both of us and told us we had done the right thing. I was crying because I could hardly bear to leave Buck behind those cold-looking gray walls. It was like cutting my heart out with a knife to know I would be separated from him. I had sent the man I loved back to prison, which to me was almost as bad as sending him to his grave. Buck kissed me goodbye and walked up the stone steps behind the warden to his office, or wherever he needed to go to change into prison clothes, and begin serving the rest of his sentence. I hated to be away from him just a short time. I loved him so much.